So today I want to go ahead and focus on chapters 4 through 6 of Brian Lowe's Companion Planting for Beginners. This is the third part of my book review. I've been having a blast going through this book, trying to figure out exactly what I want to focus on in each of the chapters. And with chapters 4 and 6, those two chapters themselves are long chapters. So I'm going to hit just a few of the points that really speak to me for what I've been doing here in my backyard. Having said that, let's get to it. Okay, so chapter 4 focuses on the foundation of the garden, which is soil. And I've been saying this for a while now. Soil, to me, is the most important thing for your garden. You have to have a good foundation or you're not going to grow anything, or your garden's going to be subpar. So focus on your soil. Focus on your soil. So chapter 4 is all about soil. Page 60 and 61, he spends time explaining the different types of soil. And I'm going to put them up right here. You've got sandy soil, silt soil, clay soil, and loam soil. Now loam is the one that you want. It has the best composition to promote plant life, to promote insect and beneficial fungi like mycorrhizal fungi and other things like that. You want a loam. Now, one thing, now I'm not going to go into all the details of all the different types of soils. He explains them beautifully on pages 60 and 61. I am going to show the jar test though. I really like this idea of testing your soil. And basically what you're seeing right here is you take a jar, you fill up about half the jar with whatever soil you're using. Now, if you want to focus on one section of your garden to see what its makeup is, you can, or you can get a little bit from all your sections of the garden and kind of do an average test of your soil makeup. But you take that jar, about half of that jar, you want to put soil in it, and then the rest of it up to the top, fill it with water. Shake, shake, shake for 1 to 2 minutes, and sit it down for about 24 hours and let everything just kind of settle and break apart. The different layers of what your soil is made of will separate themselves. And then after 24 hours, you can see what you got. So that is page 61, 60 and 61. Okay, when you get over to page 62, now this is a method I didn't know there was actually a name for it, but it's what I've been doing, and that's called a NoDig method. And basically what it is you don't dig. Self-explanatory, right? You don't dig in the garden unless you have to. So for me, what I've done since I started is I laid down my foundation of soil, and then all I've done is amend on top of it. I have not gone in and tilled and turned everything around and all that. I don't do that. I just amend to the top of the soil. So if I have a section that needs more soil, I'll add it to the top, or I'll add a layer of compost to the top and then just let it break itself down and go into the soil. But I don't dig at all, except to plant plants. And that's, only because I have to. He explains here on page 62, and I'm going to show it right here. The less the soil is disturbed, the easier it is for all the life in there to carry on its business. Now that's the whole point. Once your beds are established and those highways of fungus and earthworm tunnels and all the life that is in the soil is established, you don't want to mess with it. You don't want to come in and till it up just to till it up. Now people can do that. And if that's what you do, then by all means do it. For the most part, you want to leave all those highways intact. You don't want to disturb them. And that is the benefit of the no-dig method. He also talks about something I've never done. Usually when a plant dies, I yank the whole thing out. Because to me, you yank everything out. I don't know. Again, I'm a beginner gardener. But he talks about in here, instead of removing all the plant, cut the plant off at the root, right at the base of where the soil is, and leave the root system intact in the soil. And he explains the benefit of that is because everything is already established. All those highways, all the mycorrhizal fungi, which can shoot out their networks 200 times further than, say, like a root system on a plant. So that symbiotic relationship between the plant and the mycorrhizal fungi is invaluable. Once you have those highways established, you don't want to disturb them. So from now on, what I'm going to do is anything that especially beans, because beans bring nitrogen down into the roots and store them. So if you take the entire bean plant out, well, you just removed all that nitrogen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start cutting everything at the base of the soil and leaving the root systems intact. Let the earthworms eat them, let the fungi take care of them, and continue to benefit my soil. And that's what he talks about right here on pages 62 and 63. Very, very good knowledge here. That bird is so loud. And now he finishes chapter 4 off with something that I've been doing from the very beginning, which kind of jumped out at me, honestly, and that's using organic fertilizers. Now, when I started gardening and when I started researching gardening, one of the biggest things that I kept seeing was fertilize. And then when you're done fertilizing, fertilize some more. Well, you want to slow down on all the crazy fertilizing, because too much can be too much. But what I started doing is I had to learn what the whole what those numbers are on the bottles or on the bags of soil. You know, the NPK, the 10-10-1 or the 5-1-1 or whatever. I had to learn what all those meant, and I'm going to throw them up right here. The N is for nitrogen, the P is for phosphorus, and then the K is for potassium. Now, what do all those really mean, right? I don't know. I had no clue. So what I would do is I'd get a bag of bone meal, which is like a 10-0-0, and then I get a bag of blood meal, which was a 0-10-0. So right there I had the N and the P, I had 2 10s. And at the base of every hole that I dig for every single plant or or seed that I sow, I put down a layer of bone meal and a layer of blood meal. I've done that since I started, and I haven't had any real issues here at all. I mean, stuff grows. But I didn't understand the NPK. Now, he uses a really cool way of remembering this: roots, shoots, and fruits. The nitrogen will make the leaves grow and make the plant produce a lot of leaves. The phosphorus will make the roots shoot out and get strong. So right there you've got leaves above ground sucking in the sun, and you've got the roots in the soil spreading out to go find more nutrients and water. What I never focused on was the potassium side of it, which promotes growth of the vegetable or the fruit. So shoots, roots, and fruits. NPK. Now, if you have a good balance of all that, and you add that to the bottom of any hole that you dig, you're going to have a good plant, or you should have a really good plant. Now, too much is too much. So what he does talk about here is granule fertilizers, which would be like the ones you get in your hands, like the powders and stuff like that, and liquid fertilizers. Now, I do a combination of both. Bottom of the hole of everything I plant, I put a granule fertilizer in, and then I come back through twice a month with a liquid fertilizer. So he talks a lot about the importance of fertilizing, which I'm not going to get into more than what I just said. If you can introduce additional fertilizer to your soils or to your base of your plants, the more healthy they're going to be and the more they're going to grow and produce. It just makes sense. But with the liquid fertilizer, you have to keep on top of that, especially for, like, say, container gardens. Remember, everything that's in a container, you have to provide that plant. They can't shoot out their roots and go find new nutrients or more water. They are solely dependent upon you. So this is an example of where your liquid fertilizing schedule must stay on point, and you have to remember it. So yeah, that's chapter 4. Again, he puts a lot of good information in here about soils and keeping soils up. And again, I'm not going to beat a dead horse here, where maybe I am. Your soil is your foundation, so you have to take care of it. Okay, now let's move on to chapter 5. Okay, chapter 5 is a super short chapter, but there's really not a lot you can talk about watering. I mean, I think we can all agree if you're watching this channel or you're watching anything to do with gardening, you know water is important. Okay, chapter 5 starts on page 74, And again, I'm not going to hit everything that he talks about in here, but I do want to go over a couple things, because I've actually been asked this by the second grade class that has adopted me to their classroom this year. And that was one of their questions was, how do I know when to water my plants? Great question, right? Because even as an adult, I didn't know really when you're supposed to water. I just figured, hey, water every day. Well, that's not necessarily correct. And he uses a method that is called the finger test. And what you want to do is, take about 2 inches and you want to go down into the soil. Now, you never go off of the surface layer for watering needs, because the surface layer is going to dry out. The sun is going to bake it. The wind can blow across the surface and dry out the surface. You go about 2 inches down into the soil, whether it's a raised bed, a container garden, in ground, whatever you're growing in, and you want to feel the soil, the moisture of the soil in the soil. Make sense? So go down into the soil to find out if it's moist. Now, if the soil 2 inches to 3 inches down is moist, you don't need to water. You don't want to overwater. But if it's dry down there, you need to water. I mean, that is a super simple way of knowing when to water. And I love it that he put it in here, because it just makes sense, right? Chapter 5 is a good chapter. Very short. But again, it's watering. There's only so much you need to really know about water. So, Brian, I understand why chapter 5 is like 6 pages. I got you. Okay, chapter 6 talks about pest and disease management. Now, this chapter alone is pretty long because there's a lot in that. So I'm going to hit this chapter kind of quick. I'm not going to hit every detail that I actually wrote on my paper here as an outline, because to be honest, there's so much to this, and with some of these concepts he talks about them a little bit more in depth in chapter 7. So I'm not going to do everything in this chapter. There's a lot of information in chapter 6. So again, just going to hit the things that jump out at me. And right off the bat, it's how do you manage pests? Now, for me, last year I got nailed here. I mean, nailed with a plethora of different bugs, pests. And this year I've already had cucumber beetles, a flea beetle that I saw the other day, and those leaf-footed things that look like stink bugs. I forgot the name of them. I'm sorry. Now, I did do a test last night where I went hunting for caterpillars with the black light. Luckily, I didn't find any yet, but I have a lot of tomato plants, so I know pests are coming. I mean, it's inevitable. You're going to be a gardener, you're going to have to deal with pests, but it's how you deal with pests, the organic way, that can save your garden. He talks about how you get rid of them. Obviously, if you see caterpillars, the easiest way is pick them off and kill them. Get rid of them. However you kill them, you kill them. I mean, fish bait, right? But you just want to get rid of the caterpillars when you see them. The only caterpillars that I would leave would be the monarch butterfly caterpillars, or those kind of caterpillars. And you can actually plant plants like dill that will specifically attract those caterpillars to that plant. So I guess you can use dill also as a trap crop for pests that are technically a pest, but they turn into beautiful butterflies. So I guess that's a decision you as a gardener has to make for yourself. The one page that I really wanted to focus on with this chapter is page 87. Pretty much every word on this page I love. I even put it up here. I love this page. And that's the benefits of polycropping. Now again, monocropping is having only one plant in one section. Polycropping is you're mixing a bunch of plants together, which is companion planting. Again, plant basil next to your tomatoes. Plant dill next to your tomatoes and basil. Put peppers with your tomatoes and basil and dill, and onions and garlic. You're mixing a myriad of crops together that will help benefit each other. And that's polycropping. And he spends a I mean, whole page talking about the benefits of polycropping. And to me, I think I just kind of laid out the benefits. You're using companion planting, polycropping, as a way to benefit everything. Now, you're going to have pests come in. It's inevitable. But what you want to do is polycrop to bring in the pests, the insects that will kill those bad pests. So, like with the dill plant that I have growing, the thing's like 6 foot tall. And it's huge. And then as you can see right here, I have a soldier beetle crawling all over the top of the dill plant. Now they are looking for bad pests to eat. They're looking for aphids and, you know, all the other pests that they can eat. So when you're using a polycropping method or a companion planting method, you are inviting the good insects in to kill your bad insects, and that will alleviate you having to use 7 dust, which don't use, or neem oil or anything else, because neem oil will kill good insects also. The importance of polycropping is you're using nature to help nature. You are sending out the bat signal to all the good pests to come eat on the bad pests. And we're going to go into that right here also, where he talks about the importance, right here, page 88. I even wrote in here, most important thing. Now, this is what I'm basically talking about right here. Pest management through biological control is our supreme goal with companion planting. Biological control is the control of a pest by the introduction of a natural enemy or predator. Now, that's literally what I just got done explaining. What's better, to attract predators that will kill your bad pests for you, or spraying everything with neem oil? Well, obviously, you want to use nature to take care of nature. And this is another thing he explains, is that if you get an infestation of, say, aphids on one, I don't know, okra plant, well, do you want to nuke the entire crop of okra, or do you want to just take care of that one okra plant? Because if you kill all of the bad pests, well, then what do the good insects have to eat? Make sense? So he explains that in here in much better detail, for sure. He also talks about trap crops, and I like the idea of that, and I'm using the dill as a trap crop. I want insects coming to the dill that can then be taken care of by the beneficial insects, like the parasitic wasps that I have over there actually right now. So I'm not going to harp on trap crops, but basically it's a crop that you're going to plant to attract a certain pest away from the crops that you don't want them hitting. So, and then that will be a dinner bell for your natural predators to go eat those insects, those bad insects. I'm going to go ahead and finish this chapter of talking about crop rotation. I know any of us that have been gardening for any amount of time or grew up with a parent or grandparent that garden, I'm sure you heard the old saying, you know, Farmer A will move his plants to Farmer B's house, and then Farmer B will move his plants to Farmer A every couple of years, or Farmers A, B, C, and D will do a rotation. Well, that makes sense, because you don't want, say, a pest or a disease that attacks tomatoes to constantly be breeding in that soil if you're always going to be planting tomatoes. You want to rotate the crops around, and that's the same for the garden. Last year, where I had carrots, this year I had them in a different place. Still the same bed, but distance from there. Last year, where I had tomatoes right here last year. This year I have them way down there, and I have them over there. So you want to constantly rotate. Now, the good thing about doing videos like this is that I can go back and see where I put everything, because I didn't write everything down. Beginner gardener, right here. But page 101, he explains crop rotation, and he uses a different way of doing his crop rotations, and I'm not going to give all that away, but he explains it right here, and it totally makes sense, and this is what I'm going to start doing. Well, I guess starting next year, because I've already started planting this year. But he explains it beautifully on page 101. Great information on how to rotate your crops. Okay, everybody, so that's the third video in this book review. Again, Companion Planting for Beginners. I love this book. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I'm not going to beat this to death like I've probably done in the first two videos, but it's a great book for beginners. I would highly recommend getting this for anyone who is interested in gardening, period. And I hope everyone's been enjoying this. I absolutely have enjoyed going back through and then really focusing on points and then being able to relay them to what I've done out here and then trying to show those to you all through example. I got one more video to go that will finish off the review of this book. It's gonna be chapters 7 and 8, and I might touch on 9. Thank you for coming along on this journey with me. So hey everyone, continue reading, continue gardening, continue learning, continue teaching. Just continue getting out in the garden and enjoying this journey, because that's what gardening is. It's a journey. I have learned that right from day one, honestly. So that's all I got, everyone. Until next time, shine bright and harvest hard.